you're challenging yourself week after week and trying to inspire people and teach them and guide them, if you like, as a head coach or even a forwards coach. But it turned out different for me when, after I finished, I was taking a little bit of a break, and as I said, I was going to travel, and then an opportunity came to go to the World Cup in 2011. That happened pretty much kind of the end of May in 2011, so I knew that was coming up in September, and I was going to try and enjoy the summer, relax, take a bit of enjoy the weekends, and not have to do a pre-season like I had done for the previous 15 years, which is the toughest time as a rugby player. And I went off to the World Cup, came back, Sky got onto me to do European rugby, the Irish Times then got onto me to write a column, and then I started doing kind of different events and different kind of speaking gigs and stuff like that. And before I knew it, I had a decent enough salary, if you like, and it just kind of kicked on from there. And I started doing various radio pieces, and I'm here now, kind of at this stage, thinking it's would the coaching be easier? Because obviously, when the teams are going well that you're talking about, it's much easier. And then when they lose and you criticize and you kind of, talk a little bit negatively about the performance or of individuals and the team, that you become kind of public enemy number one amongst that group of people. But I'm very lucky. I do certainly pinch myself at times and think I'm lucky to take hold of a microphone and probably be in the halfway line at the Aviva Stadium or the Millennium Stadium or in Twickenham or wherever, and be calling a game that Ireland are playing in.
Is it tough? Is it tough to bite your tongue? Did that take a bit of practice? You know what I mean?
Takes time.
Or to stay away from being biased too.
Yeah, it takes time. I've had criticism over the years of being too hard on Munster. Then I've had criticism for Leinster people being too pro Munster, and when I do a game for Ireland now, if I pick a Munster player as man of the match, people send me tweets and
it's everywhere about CJ the last 2 games. Sure,
yeah, I get CJ Stander man of the match for 2 games in a trot. And I was talking to my producer on about 60 minutes, and we usually do it around 75 minutes. But you have to give him some idea. So I said Andrew Conway, CJ Stander, Johnny Sexton. I give about 3 or 4 names, Tyke Furlong, about 4 names, potential candidates. And he came back in my ear then, and I said, because you can press the button, you can speak to him, and obviously people don't hear you. And he kind of said to me, look, if you feel CJ Stander is the one, back yourself and do it. And it kind of went that way. And then I blame Shane Jennings. He was beside me because he was doing the kind of third voice in the commentary, and he kind of gave me the thumbs up for CJ again. And then before you realize, you finish the game, and then you go, fuck. You meet people who gave CJ Stander the man of the match again, and then it was Munster bias and all that stuff. But you just got to deal with that. All I try and do, Tommy, I do doubt myself at times in those kind of things. Did I do the right thing? But I usually kind of go with my gut instinct. If it feels right, and obviously the player has to have played well. But yeah, it's a bit of a fickle situation, and I was through a period in 2016 when I was pretty critical of Munster as well, and anything I've ever said is never aimed at anyone personally, and I can kind of stand and look at myself in the mirror, and I know that's true. It's never personal with anyone, and I'd like to think I've never got personal with anyone. I'd never go and say a player, really kind of insult a player. If someone doesn't play well, there's ways you can say that, and the whole world can see it as well, and they're not stupid as well, because people watching the game at home on their couch, there's lots of very well educated rugby people who've been involved in rugby all their lives, and they can see the same thing. And it's just part and parcel of the job. People don't always agree with you, and people do agree with you other times, and you just gotta go with the flow with that. But to have that opportunity to talk about sport and earn a living talking about sport is very enjoyable. but there is a fair bit of pressure at times. There is times, I said this a couple of weeks ago somewhere else, that, when Ireland were pretty well beaten in Twickenham, part of me wanted to leave down the mic after that game and not do it again.
Really?
Because, yeah, of course, you're trying to separate yourself and be as neutral as possible, but you don't hide the fact that I'm Irish and I want Ireland to win. And you do kind of have that feeling, because 2019 was kind of a tricky. It was a tricky year talking about the team. Working throughout the Six Nations, the World Cup warm-ups, and then going to the World Cup, and it was disappointing. It's difficult to completely separate yourself from that environment that you were in, because I know how hard the players, the effort they put in, the sacrifice, the commitment, the training. No player goes out in the field to play poorly. The one thing that does infuriate me, if I've ever seen it, I've very rarely seen it, is when players are not trying and they don't have that desire and that motivation, and the work rate isn't high. And I didn't see that from the Irish players last year. I think they just, I think unfortunately too many of the players weren't playing as well as the year before, and at the top level that can have an effect.
Is that a thing though? Like, is it even that, or because the way I was looking at it is that the world seemed to have caught up with them and moved on a stage, because rugby changes nearly every 2 years, doesn't it? Like, there's something.
Yeah, that happens in all sport, Tommy. I think you have to evolve, and I think I think in the World Cup review they probably would have looked back and realized that they made mistakes, that Joe made mistakes. Maybe he was too loyal to some players. Maybe players themselves didn't challenge the coach about maybe the game plan or things that possibly weren't 100% right. But it's difficult, because when you've come off the back of being incredibly successful in 2018 and the previous couple of years, which the team were, you believe you'll get back there. You believe the switch, someone will turn the switch, players will find the form, the pass will stick, the performance will come, and it breeds confidence then, and it can have the opposite effect, where it takes away confidence when things are going difficult, and when things are difficult, and you're kind of stuck in a rut. And then team, unfortunately, we're in that kind of rut. So you do feel it, but you've got to try and separate yourself. And I think I've done that in the last few years much better than I did at the start. At the start, you're kind of you're nervous about what you say. You analyze what you say. You're kind of overthinking things. Whereas, in latter years, in the last couple of years, I think I'm a bit more comfortable and just having a conversation really with people, and trying to call it as honest as you can and what you see in front of you. But it can be very, very fickle,
Yeah, because a few times, like, I've went not so much maybe with the lads, when you're chatting amongst as a pundit or whatever, and there's times I'm trying to read your mind, but you're kind of going, does Alan just want to turn around and go, here lads, if you knew what you were talking about, you'd shut the fuck up, like.
Yeah, well, there's
but you
times
can't say it, like,
Yeah, well, there's times some people kind of will challenge you, and genuinely, constructive criticism is something that I've had to deal with all my life, and I like it, because if somebody tells you that, look, you got this wrong and this is the perception out there, if you don't take it on board and you ignore that, you're being stupid. So I do take constructive criticism, and sometimes people will send you a direct tweet and say, look, I think you got that wrong. Such and such was a better player, or you called the red card or the yellow card wrong. And you kind of go, yeah, well, fair enough. You've had the balls to do that, and I respect you for it. And you maybe get into dialogue. Even if you don't agree with what they say, you can go back and say, look, I think you're wrong, and this is what happened, and this is why it happened, and this is why I think I'm right in that situation, or why I'm wrong, and you admit you're wrong. But sometimes people just, I suppose, they don't look at the build up to a situation, if you like, or the reasons things happen. Sometimes, which as the ex-player and someone who's been there a lot, I try and look back at certain reasons why somebody missed a tackle, or why Ireland were a bit flat, or why Munster were a bit flat, or Leinster, or whatever. and I try and delve back into a little bit deeper. And sometimes that frustrates me that somebody just sees a situation and play and they believe they're right, and maybe I think they're wrong. But I've had to I kind of engage with people sometimes, and I say, you know what, you're right. I got that wrong. I got that call wrong and stuff. And so that happens. It's just part and parcel of it. Look, at the end of the day, Tommy, by and large, people are very, very good, and they're respectful around. When I went to Sky first, and this is probably not being cocky, because I think me that I'm not cocky.
Well, you haven't mentioned the fact that you single-handedly beat Argentina in the World Cup.
We get on to that in a minute, but I think when the first time I went to Sky, I think the producer at the time said the pundit, the player is the expert, the commentator is one just kind of steering the ship, really, and then you go for that expert analysis, and you've got to try and give your opinion. I don't look at myself as an expert, Jesus, and I don't think that way, but I do try. And sometimes you in your head you drift back, and being the player out in the field, what you would have done and what the player should have done, and why this didn't happen, or why this did happen, or whatever, so if you can kind of get into that zone, really, you are kind of giving your own expertise, whether it's right or wrong, and not everybody agrees with that at times, but so that's part and parcel of it. It's the ups and downs of doing it. So obviously, when Ireland win, Tommy, or Munster win, or Leinster win, and I'm doing that, it's just an easy flow. It's nobody engages with you unless they're an English person or a Welsh person or a Scottish person. Ireland's just beaten them, and they've had to listen to your commentary, and they're living here in Ireland, listen to Virgin Media. Sometimes they'll disagree with what you say, but
so delving back, so when you use your player brain, you delve back into it. Would you have dropped Joe Marler with a slap if you did? Just because there's a moment you're going, you funny bastard, but stop. What are you doing? There's cameras everywhere.
You know what? I got a good few people, and you have to be very careful with this, because it does give across the wrong impression, and it was totally wrong what he did. Grabbing Alan Wynne Jones by the nuts, if I can say that. Can I? Is it all right to say that?
My podcast. You can say whatever you want.
But I said this in News Talk when I was on Off the Ball with the boys on Monday morning, that I would have probably laughed more at that. I'd be more offended by what Owen Farrell did to George North when he stripped the ball, when he knocks the ball going over the line.
That was scummy, actually. Yeah.
With the bit of kind of goading, if you like, that stuff would have used to infuriate me. The bit of pinching or grabbing or pushing or stuff like that. But look, I can fully understand and appreciate that it does kind of send out the wrong message, and it was wrong what he did. And but I probably would have grabbed him by the balls back.
That's it.
Not punched him, but look, it was wrong. He got punished for it. I didn't think he should have got as severe a punishment. But it won't happen on a rugby field again. So nobody will do that again, because they see now it's something that I've never seen before. I think back in the 90s, when you go to France, you get your balls grabbed, you get bitten, you get spit at, and that was like somebody trying to hurt you. That was only kind of, he was play acting, if you like, but it did, I can fully understand and appreciate how people would think that's not okay, and it's not okay, because I think particularly for women who are groped and grabbed, and been in that situation in nightclubs and stuff like that, it's not okay to touch somebody like that and grab somebody. But I suppose when you see, again, out in the rugby field, something like that, I thought, because people ask me would I punched him, I don't think I would have. I actually saw the funny side of it, but in hindsight, I'm fully accepting that it's wrong, and it was wrong.
Because Donica Ryan, I remember reading an interview with him one time. He says, what three famous or two famous people would you want to sit down to dinner with? And everybody was, the usual Gandhi and Jesus or whatever. And he turns around and he goes, Alan Quinlan and Xavier Rush, because they'd beat the shit out of each other, and it'd be the best meal ever.
Yeah.
So was that right?
it wouldn't fucking last long, would it? The two of us beating the heads off each other. Something would give, and we wouldn't be able to enjoy our meal. Yeah, Dunner said that, which because we played for a couple of years, and I was training with Ireland, but probably didn't play all the time. So I'd come back and play Pro 14 games while the internationals were on, and I'd be back up with Ireland the next week. And I remember, probably me being one of the senior players in the pack, if you like, and most of the starting pack in Munster were probably starting with Ireland. But I remember playing with Donegal a lot, and we played Cardiff so many occasions, and I used to have these kind of on-running battles and feuds with Xavier Rush, where he'd carry the ball and I'd try and behead him, and I'd carry the ball and he'd try and behead me. They'd be all red cards at this stage, but it was just play on back then. But he was a hard bastard. Oh Jesus, he was hard. Yeah, he was. Yeah, and actually we got on great because he was real old school, where he'd just embrace you after the pitch, after the match, and kind of want to have a beer with you, or a beer in the dressing room and stuff like that. And we actually became great friends after probably about 3 or 4 matches. We were trying to kill each other. We actually became great pals after that, and we played in the Barbarians in 2010 as well, and we spent 2 weeks together. And the Babas really is a party for 2 weeks, and we had great crack, and so we've actually kept in touch since. But so back then, I think the dinner wouldn't have lasted long, but now it would be quite interesting because we'd probably be able to laugh and joke about those battles that we had.
See, the hardest bastard you came up against?
One of them. I think he was hard. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think the other kind of hard ones were Peter Clohessy, and Trevor Brennan.
He was a different animal altogether, Clohessy.
Yeah, people often ask me that, who's the hardest players you played against. I think usually it's players in your own position, isn't it? Really, that you've gone head to head with, and Trevor Brennan and myself used to kick lumps out of each other. Trevor was hard as well, and he was fucking dangerous as well at times, Trevor, because
he's a psychopath. He jumped into the audience.
Yeah, he was so well. I would have done that, he did that in Toulouse when somebody insulted his mother. I probably would have done the same thing. But Trevor was such a good fella off the field, but just a lunatic on the field, and a bit like myself. If we probably could have controlled our discipline temper a bit more, he certainly would have got more caps for Ireland. But what a great fella, top bloke. But Trevor was hard. Claw was hard as well. Claw was a hard bastard. There's no doubt about that. And but then, if you like, how do you define hard, Tommy? Is it someone who's fighting you or punching you, or just I had great respect for fellas who could just play the game tough. You know what I mean? Someone like Lawrence Delalio, who I played against many times, he was tough. There was no kind of dirty stuff or punching or stamping, but he was just a hard fucker. Like Jerome Kano from New Zealand. I remember I passed in 2008 and we played the All Blacks in Dublin and in Croke Park. And I remember I got a ball off the side of a ruck, and Jerome Kano was kind of lining me up, and I just shipped the ball onto John Hayes, and I said, fucking, here you go, Hayes, you can run at him. And he fucking smashed Hayes, and I went, oh, Jesus. Because John, like, is strong bastard, like, he's 125 kilos or whatever he was. He had a good 20 kilos on me anyway, and I said, at least you can take the impact. But, so there's a difference in what kind of hard you're talking about. Richie McCaw as well, he was a hard fucker because, he physically wouldn't kind of hurt you, but you'd know when he hit you, and if you hit him, and he'd get back up every time, and he was just so tenacious and resilient, and obviously a great player, one of the greatest of all time. So there's different types of hard, if you like.
Yeah, because they like even asking other lads, and it's like that. You I don't know who somebody picked out. They were talking about Peter Stringer, given his physical size.
Yeah, of course. Tough. Yeah, it's a toughness, and Roger himself were like small in stature, but Rog, you could probably run out over Rog or get past Rog, but he'd never kind of get out of your way. Like, no matter who ran at him, he'd give it his all and try and knock you. and he was mentally and hard, not physically big. And the same for Stringer, So there's different types of hard. It's kind of mental resilience and toughness as well that fellas get back up and they go again, And Paul O'Connell, look at Paul, he's the kind of fella you wouldn't want to be getting, thinking you're going to get the better of, because he just keep coming back for more, and he was just tough as well, So most guys at that level are pretty tough, Tommy, and that's just the reality of it.
Because I'd Leamy on the podcast a couple of weeks. Leamy doesn't do social media or anything at all. His claim is that his hands are too big to use an actual smartphone.
Yeah, he doesn't. But yeah, Leamy was a hard bastard as well. But we're naming a lot of Munster players. Look at someone like Leamy was tough as fucking nails. There's no doubt about that. But you look at someone like Dricko, who I played with a lot, played against a lot, and just admired a lot, because Dricko was incredibly hard and tough and aggressive and had all those silky skills and all that wonderful talent as well. But he was just tough, mentally tough. Didn't kind of shirk any challenge either, So there's the top players and the top international players that I was lucky to play with or against. Very, very few that you'd see a weakness or a softness in them.
Yeah, because I'd Andy Dunn on, and we were just talking about fighting or whatever, and he was talking about Darcy and Driscoll. He says, look at the size of him. He says, if you can stay at that level for that long, you have to be teak tough, because John Connors, the actor, the Traveller actor chap, offered out basically Gordon Darcy online. He said he'd fight him, basically.
Why?
He said something. People are slagging off their counties, for certain reasons why people think they are a certain way. And he went, try coming from a county where the one phrase you ever heard all your whole life, being Wexford, is there's only two things to come out of Wexford: strawberries and necklace, right? And this is the phrase I've heard my whole fucking life. Went to college in Dublin, playing for Leinster, and this is all I heard of every fucker. And what's his name jumped on it? John Connors jumped on it. He goes, I'm going to fight you. And he went, grand, all right. So my question to Dunn was, who'd win? He goes, my money's on Darcy. He says, you can't break a fucker like him. He says, regardless of fighting standards. But I was kind of thinking then, what sport, if it wasn't rugby, what sport? Because there would have been some sport. Being a Quinlan from Tipperary, you would have had to play some sport.
Yeah, well, I wanted to play hurling for Tipperary. That was kind of one of the goals or dream as a kid. Right. So I had kind of two. It was play rugby for Ireland and play hurling for Tipperary. Couldn't do both, obviously, when I went professional. So it kind of one sec, Tom.
Playing for Tipperary in hurling. What standard of hurling were you at? Or who did you play for in Tip?
I played for Arville Rovers, yeah.
So did you?
I probably, Joe Hayes, the former Tipperary hurler and good friend of mine who won 2 All-Irelands with Tipperary, he always kind of said to me that the fellas who failed at hurling took up other sports and I took up rugby and took rugby more serious because I failed at hurling. But no, I loved hurling. Nicky English lived up the road, and Nicky was teaching me in the Abbey. Nicky was teaching me in the Abbey, and I used to do a call round in the evenings with Nicky after school. And sure, every chance we got, I used to bring the hurling and slitter with me and want to puck around Limerick Junction with Nicky. So we kind of, the call round, which probably should have taken an hour and a half or 2 hours in the evening, usually took about 3 hours, because we'd have to have a puck around every couple of houses, and they were my wages really for going around with him. But yeah, I loved hurling. I still love hurling, and being from Tipperary, you know what it's like. It's it's kind of ingrained in you. But I'm not sure. I played soccer, hurling, Gaelic football, rugby, played a lot of tennis growing up, and so they were kind of the 4 or 5 sports that I always had a football, rugby ball, soccer ball, or hurling in my hand. And I think if you ask me now, what would I like to be great at now in sport, it'd be golf. I took up golf. I played a very, very rare game when I was younger. I didn't really have the patience or time for it, or give it the time. But I remember after we were beaten in the Heineken Cup final in 2000 in Twickenham, that summer, I didn't go on tour with Ireland. They went to Argentina and America. And I remember a few mates of mine in Tip who just wanted me to go and play golf, and a few of the boys that started playing golf. And I joined up in Tipperary Golf Club and kind of fell in love with it, and started playing it very regularly and as much as I could, and I still do that. So if I kind of had a dream of, if I was a kid again and I was dreaming, I'd certainly be dreaming about being a professional golfer. It wouldn't happen, but it'd be something I'd love to have been brilliant at.
Fabian Palouse would never kick you up the hole on a golf course anyway. That's a question every time I've ran into you. I've always had. What did you say to him during that final to make him kick you?
I didn't say anything to him because I think Baron Keller was the Toulouse scrum half, the New Zealand international, and he had been playing with Toulouse for a couple of seasons at that stage. He was a brilliant player, but he was very lippy and dominant and physical and in your face, Baron Kelleher. And I remember we had a scrum when it broke up. It went down again, and he was shouting at Nigel Owens at the time that Munster were illegal and it should have been a Toulouse penalty. And I remember kind of just trying to stop him influencing the referee and kind of standing in front of him. And there was a few words exchanged, and then Fabian Palouse kind of obviously felt the need to step in and show that bit of dominance and that kind of drawing a line in the sand, if you like, and get me to gently move away, if you like. And so we kind of squared up to each other. And to be fair, Fabian Palouse was someone I had massive respect for. He was an incredible player. Was around for so long, achieved so much, and I accidentally stepped on his toe as I was departing that little debate, and then he kicked me up the arse, and that was it. Really, we got the penalty, and it was a bit embarrassing. It still is embarrassing to look back at it. I don't look back at it, and I don't think I've ever looked back at it. But people often ask me about it. But the only thing I can say is 99.9% of the time, those little altercations, I should say, or little scuffles would have went against me and I would have been penalised. So here was one that was going my way for a change, and it was genuinely nothing really. I wasn't trying to instigate any sort of I wasn't trying to be a bollocks, basically. I was trying to just get Kelleher to shut up and stop screaming. I think he was shouting at John Hayes that he's gone down red 3 is going down the whole time. And I was like, fuck off and mind your own business. It's nothing to do with you, and stop trying to fucking influence the referee. And it happened pretty quickly. But anyway, it's history, as the fella says. Fabian Palouse shook my hand after the match. Thankfully, he's another fella I wouldn't like to be taken on. He's hard. He was hard.
Jesus Christ, he's got that desperate damn chin. You're not going to get the better of that.
No. But anyway, history. And anyway, at least we won. Anyway, thanks be to Jesus.
Thanks be to Jesus. Before I know you have to head away. John Kelly chatting with one of the days we were doing one of those Heineken things that we did today, and the discussion was himself and Eric Miller were there, and the discussion turned into who you had roomed with. And he turned around and he says, yeah, I roomed with Eric one time. Eric never once wore any clothes while we were in the room together. And Eric nodded along as if it was normal. And the entire audience were kind of going, oh, Jesus, right. Okay. And but from then, anytime lads get put away like that, I chat to any rugby players, who's the mad, did you have any weird experience getting thrown into a room with a fella that you didn't know or whatever?
No, I roomed with Eric a few times myself, and he would walk around kind of with no clothes on. He would do sit-ups at 6 o'clock in the morning on the floor, when just kind of strange stuff, to say the least. He was lights out at 9 o'clock, 9:30. And when you're with, you're away in camp or you're away on tour or something, part and parcel of part of the whole thing is your roommate and how you get on with them. Yeah. And you have the chats at night, and I love to have the chats late at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock, cup of tea, chat about the world and stuff like that. And there was none of that. Like, it was lights out at 9 o'clock with Eric. He was asleep. So you're literally, you either have to go to bed or you have to fucking leave the room and go down to the team room and just hang around or go to somebody else's room. But look, he was a great fella. But that was just the way he did things, and that's the way he was. So he was in bed early, up early. I was in bed late, up late. If I could get away with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was a bit of a night owl. So, but he was a great fella. But all the boys chat about that, and he got a great kick out of that as well himself. That's just the way he was. But the person I roomed the most with Munster anyway was Rog, and that was we got on great together, and we had great chats. And Rog loves the cup of tea in the chats as well, but he wouldn't be staying up till 12, half 12 now at night, where I would want to. He'd be kind of lights out half 10, 11 at the latest. But we got on great together, and it was kind of unique rooming with him, particularly if we had a few drinks, because he would go sleepwalking, and I would, yeah, and he would mistakenly think my gear bag was the toilet on occasions, and stuff like that, and he'd piss around the room basically after drinks. So that was always a challenge, and if you had a few drinks, you'd have to put him to bed and mind him. And we were often in Langtons and Kilkenny, and you'd put Rog to bed, and then we could sit down and have a few late drinks. And 10 minutes later, after putting to sleep and him literally be snoring, 15 minutes later, you'd be in the bar and he'd be sitting beside you, slobbering again on a few pints. But we got on great together. And look, I think when you're away on tour, Tommy, it's you're away for 3-4 weeks at a time, and you have to try and get on. You have to get on with your roommate. And we had a situation with Ireland where, to be fair, and it wasn't kind of people handpicking, it was David Humphreys would look after the rooming list, and he'd literally go around and kind of, the vast majority of fellas, he would kind of say, who do you want to room with? Who goes to bed early? Who goes to bed late? And by and large, everybody kind of was happy with their roommates and stuff like that.
Did you do something to his boots one time?
He had orange boots he had them in Australia, so we were always slagging him about being an orange man and stuff like that. Humps was great. Humps was great crack, because we were the Tags and they were the Prods, and the Ulster lads and the Munster lads or the Leinster lads or whatever, and it was complete banter, and David Humphreys loved playing along with it, telling us that he supported England and stuff like that, the soccer, and it was marching season coming up now up north and all that kind of stuff. So he got Adidas response to him at the time, and he got Adidas to kind of make an orange pair of boots for him, but we sprayed him green. In Australia, we just could not look at the orange boots because he got some kick out of it. But he was a brilliant character. Humps just loved the crack, and he loved the slagging about that. So it wasn't. Be very careful the way I say that, because people could take offence when we're slagging each other about being Protestants or Catholics. It was just pure banter. And do you know what it meant? Do you know what it meant, Tommy? That it didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
We didn't give a shit who was Protestant, who was Catholic, and they didn't either, really. It didn't come into the religion, didn't come into it, but it was part of the slagging and the banter at times, and he was a great character, Humps.
It's the same as the comedy crowd in Belfast. Like, there's no line at all. Like, it's just take the piss out of you for whatever you are. Like,
yeah, you I suppose take offense to that stuff.
Because that was another thing. I suppose because the ripping a piss that must have went on in Munster of new lads coming in just to make them feel welcome. Did that come as a shock to any of the boys, the new lads coming in, like big names, like the likes of Doug Howlett and fucking big names coming in?
Yeah,
how fast are you on them? Like,
straight away, I think it was all part and parcel of just bringing them down to our level and making them feel welcome as well. I think when Dougie arrived, everybody started, and I think I might have been the instigator. I got all the boys to start running to their cars and saying to jump in their cars and drive them away and start screaming, watch your cars, lads. That was one of his first training sessions, because Dougie was just after arriving after coming back from the '07 World Cup, where he
had an incident.
He had a few too many drinks and decided to kind of run down the street on top of the roof of a load of cars, and got into trouble for that. So we but it was just brilliant crack, constant crack. Whether that was just getting towel flicked in the shower when your bare arse was kind of when you were kind of relaxed in the corner having a shower or something, and John Hayes would towel flick you and sting your ass.
I once towel flicked John Hayes when I think we were probably under 16s, and Shannon were out training. Shannon were using Clanwilliam at the time.
That's right, yeah.
And Tom Ellard, Tana, he dared me to flick John Hayes as he walked out of the shower. I did.
You took off running then?
Took off running, but as they say, an elephant never forgets. The following week, he caught me. And he waited till I was clean. All my clean clothes back on. And I remember actually the same day, I don't know how I remember this, but the same night, I walked back out of the shower and you says, your elbows are filthy. I said, what? Never forget your elbows. It was like, but you said it to me so seriously and walked past. But the next thing, Hayes caught me when I was spotlessly clean and took me out to the muddiest, shittiest part of Clan and fucked me into it and just rolled me around like a fucking donut in it.
You deserved it, I think, Tommy.
Oh, no, 100%. 100%. It was, and I laughed the whole time. Delighted with myself, sure.
Yeah, you probably deserved it. I'm sure you did. But John was a great character. He loved pranking people and messing like that. And there are days I miss, the crack in the dressing room and the slagging. I think one of the boys broke up, and I better not say who it was. They were engaged. The girl called it off, and Frankie Sheehan brought in his CD then the next day of love songs and started playing him in the dressing room. And that's the level. And I remember thinking, Jesus, that is too much. But that's just the way it was. It was kind of, that was Frankie's way of saying, lift the head and let's go. You've got to get back on track. And so if they didn't, we kind of had a saying, if you weren't slagged, you weren't cared for.
Right, yeah.
But like some of the fucking slagging was just way overboard, and like at times I would say like that is not slagging, like it's way too much. But that was it. Then you kind of got kind of lambasted if you complained about a prank or something happening to you. And Frankie Sheehan was usually the instigator behind all those practical jokes. Donegal Callum was another one. But we great times, we great fun, great nights out, and they're kind of days you miss, but they're unfortunately they're behind us now, Tommy. But we've great memories over the years of brilliant crack on and off the field.
I know you've to head away, so I'll just only ask you one more question. Your book was great, but I didn't feature in it once. Not once. Not even in the appendix at the end. One of your greatest coaching achievements to Munster Schools Cup.
You know what, Tommy? You'll feature in the next book.
Great. That's all I needed to hear.
That's that kind of win. That winning that trophy with the Tech at the time, the vocational school in Tipperary, was genuinely, and I mean this. I got some joy out of that. I got some enjoyment out of that when I was coaching you guys, and then you won the trophy, and it was incredible. So the next book, I'll mention yourself and Tana in it, okay? And
that's all I wanted to hear. That's all I wanted to hear. Alan, you've been an absolute treasure, as I guessed you would be. Thank you very much. Alan Quinlan, so which club comes first? Clanwilliam, Munster, or Ireland? If you had to get a tattoo of a crest in the morning,
you forgot one. You forgot Shannon.
Shannon, I beg your pardon.
Clanwilliam was where it all started, so that's kind of that's ingrained in me. And then Shannon, Munster and Ireland is different because you're, in a sense, it was provincial and national, just different kind of way of looking at it. Yeah. I'm a bit old school where the club game is really, really important to me, and that's the system I came through. So the next book, I'll mention yourself and Tana in it, okay? And Davy Quinlan.
That's all I wanted to hear. That's all I wanted to hear. Alan, you've been an absolute treasure, as I guessed you would be. Thank you very much.
And Clanwilliam and Shannon were very special. Clanwilliam first and foremost, and then Shannon, because they're the ones that kind of gave us the pathway to go on and have the opportunity to play for Munster, like so many brilliant players before us. You know, the history and associated with a Munster jersey, or you know, I grew up watching the old Five Nations, maybe dreaming a little bit I'd get to play for Ireland someday. So, you know, it wouldn't have happened without the club game.
That answers that question. Alan Quinlan, thanks a million.
My pleasure, Tommy. Good luck. Thanks.
Cheers, man.
Tommy, I hope you have enough there. So
I have. Alan, you're an absolute legend. Thank you very much for taking time out.
And if you want to do anything more to it, give me a shout, sure.
How are you lads? What's the crack?